connected recruiting, or you could call it corrected recruiting if you're going to get really churlish, because it is kind of the same thing. It's like correcting the course of recruitment. And Bullhorn have been talking about connected recruiting for some time now. But you said a few minutes ago, which is why we're now recording this, 2.0. Let's just quickly catch up. What is 1.0, first of all, everybody? Talk to me.
Yeah, so I can jump in here. Connected Recruiting 1.0 is really about combining, kind of a methodology with great technology, so you could achieve the results you're after. Kind of starting, kind of creating a talent lifecycle flywheel where you create a great candidate experience, and then get the results that you're after from driving that.
So that sounds good enough to me. So what on earth have you done to make it better?
Yeah, well, we're always trying to improve, right? Add new bits, add new pieces. So like, one of the key elements was kind of this two component of adding moments that matter. So looking kind of throughout that process inside the flywheel and the various cycles of the talent experience, looking at the key things that are happening as a candidate is moving from applicant to placement. So then you can kind of benchmark and milestone and make sure those are really great things that you're driving from an experience standpoint. Then also that leads to the second part, which is moments that matter. So all of those key moments that matter, getting the metrics that matter to measure, so you can track, see how you're improving those key areas, key stages, and so you can create the best flywheel possible. And then the other element that Connected Recruiting kind of 2.0 is bringing in is introducing the client lifecycle into this as well, where obviously Connected Recruiting, the first version, focused on the talent lifecycle. See, client, business development, and sales is becoming more important. So, looking into that element as well to bring in kind of a holistic staffing and recruiting methodology.
And Billy, question that might be dumb, but like, what are those key moments? Like, what are some examples of what you would call a moment that is worth measuring?
Yeah, so thinking of like the 4 stages kind of from like start to finish. So I'll just walk you through kind of some of the key areas. So like the intake, like the application side, so like filling out the intake, the screening questionnaire, the form, whatever different methods that you have to capture somebody into the database. The qualification side of things. So getting to the point where you're qualifying, asking the right questions, kind of sorting out your candidates based off the information and their skill sets. And then thinking about the engagement that's happening kind of throughout that life cycle. And then as you get into the onboarding side, so then you have the onboarding pre-hire type things, making sure everyone is having the right documentation there. Like the first day that they start their placement, obviously, is a key milestone. So thinking of it as that, where you have kind of the zones of connected recruiting that so many are familiar with, where that kind of like attract, nurture, onboard, re-engage, right? But then there's key areas, key things happening within each one of those.
And I take it those steps, those areas haven't changed. We're still looking at attract, engage, onboard, and nurture.
Correct. Yeah, it's just breaking some of them out. So you still have like your engage, onboard, nurture, side, and obviously attract is what brings them in. But then it's just breaking it down a little bit more, because obviously there's some nuance that happens within each one of those phases. Like for example, the engage phase, you're trying to convert an applicant to a candidate, so nurturing them through that process. As they go. And obviously like the onboard side, you have the pre-assignment kind of onboarding experience side. And then when they're on assignment, what are you doing to nurture? And there's kind of, obviously key moments that are happening throughout.
I think we need to remember, and we've all been in recruitment a while, yeah, but we often forget that clients are people too. And ironically, they're quite important people, because they're the ones that actually are the ones that hand out the money. Candidates don't do that. Their currency is time, hopefully a lot of goodwill and loyalty, and a lovely CV. Whereas clients are like getting in with the hard dollars and euros and pounds. So we've always said, even in my much younger days, pre-Bullhorn being even born, when it was a glint in our eyes, that getting your client population nailed, if that's the correct language to use, which we know it isn't, and monetizing those contacts, because invariably they do move around, and they move from business to business, which is crucial. They move hopefully up the ladder, not down, because that'd be quite scary if they did. But also they move from business to business from a candidate perspective, as well as a client one as well. And I think recruiters often don't monetize the placement process from a client perspective as much as they could. They often don't, and they could so easily, as they go through the recruitment life cycle, be collecting contacts through the interview process and onboarding process, and just collecting, and then automating and driving those relationships and really biting down into the muscle. I mean, often salespeople call it landing and expanding, which always makes me giggle. But it's more around what actually can you do to monetize those contacts? What can you do to demonstrate loyalty, innovation, sector knowledge, experience? What can you do to limit the risk of only working with one person within a business, and how can you work? So it's absolutely fantastic that 2.0 now brings the client back in the room. They're not just there for an interview and an invoice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. Can you see then? I mean, you know, I'm going to ask you an obvious question while I've got you, and we could edit this bit out. Is there a 3.0?
Yeah.
Of course, we're always evolving, and obviously, if you think about the candidate side, then you think about the client side and kind of business development sales. There's a third side, right, of the recruitment process. It's your own internal employees. So how can you craft almost a similar life cycle? You know, make sure you have continual training, learning, development, right, for obviously your new hires, but even your existing staff. So I think if you can knock out of the park those three audiences, right, you set yourself up to do really well in all market conditions. You will thrive.
We've always had a 3 C's mentality, although we added a fourth on: candidates, clients, colleagues, and cash. So you've got your candidates, which is 1.0. You've got your clients, which is 2.0. 3 C's is colleagues. Some people call them consultants, but colleagues means beyond just recruiters and everyone front and back office. Ultimately, what we're talking about eventually is the money. You just, you know, you get to Connect Recruiting 4.0 and money just starts firing itself out of all of your devices.
Yeah, that's the goal of automation, right? Just automate that part of it too.
That would be gorgeous. Absolutely fantastic. Well, thank you very much for the talk around Connected Recruiting 2.0.
Pleasure. Yeah, excited to see what it's going to do.